Hello and welcome back to Inside the Church. Father Mark here as we continue our statue series. We're looking today at our beloved patron, St. Anthony of Padua. And I have to confess, before I was assigned here, I didn't really know much about him. The only thing I knew was that he's a patron of lost things, that if I ever lost my keys or a wallet or something, that's the one you're supposed to pray to. And the statue actually kind of reminds us that he is the patron of lost items. You see this red book, this book of Psalms. And the story goes that this book of Psalms he prayed with often and had notes in, and one of his brother Franciscans stole it from him. And the brother actually left the monastery as well. And St. Anthony prayed that both would return. And miraculously, of course, they both did, and the brother repented. And so that's why he's the patron of lost items. Recall we looked at St. Anthony of Padua briefly on in the Inside the Church series. We looked at how at age 15 he joined the Augustine order following St. Augustine and received a very rigorous theological education, especially in Scripture. And then during his 20s he encountered some Franciscans in his town. And he's moved by their faith, their simplicity, their performance of the gospel, if you will. And he had heard of the 5 martyrs down in Morocco as they were preaching to the Muslims. And he longed to do the same with his life. And he asked to join the Franciscans so that he could go off and be a martyr. But as a lot of times in life, God had different plans for him. He was sick on that trip and he came back. And in his first few years in the Franciscan order, no one knew of his high education, that he simply just lived a life of prayer. And the main thing that everybody knew him for was just washing the dishes. They thought that was his greatest gift. And then about 1222, by happenstance, he was at an event and there wasn't anybody to preach. And somebody was like, "Hey, we heard that you're a priest of the Augustine order. Step up and preach." And he gave a beautiful sermon, and from there, his whole life changed. St. Francis of Assisi had gotten word of kind of this priest in his midst and his high education and this beautiful preaching, and he wanted to put it to use. So for the next 9 years of his life, until he passed away at 36, St. Anthony of Padua traveled all over Italy and southern France, preaching and teaching. And if you never read his sermons, they're very, very beautiful and very, very simple to understand. When you read them, it's just very simple, concise, and it's very heavy on Scripture. That when you read them, it's kind of like listening to a good teacher who breaks down Scripture so that you can understand it. He does it so beautifully with the 4 senses of Scripture, that he helps you understand the literal sense, like what is God speaking through this author? But then he helps you go deeper. What does this reveal about Jesus? What does this reveal about how I'm supposed to live my life as a Christian? How does this prepare me for life after death? Those 4 great senses of the Scripture. Now when you read them, it's like somebody instructing you, walking you how to follow Christ more deeply. He's so effective in his preaching. He was able to preach to the rich and the poor and the highly educated and the simple, anyone, everyone. He was so effective in his preaching, including preaching to heretics, those who held false teachings, that he was known as, one of his titles was Hammer of Heretics. So a beautiful title that recognizes him as bringing heretics back to true faith. And so hopefully you learned a thing or two about this wonderful saint, St. Anthony of Padua. And until next time, God bless.